Greetings, my fellow freedom lovers and sovereign thinkers. This is LL Reviews Podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful swampy mangroves of South Florida. And today's date is Saturday, February 16th, 2019. I'd like to give a shout out to a few folks out there. And a couple of people I've met last night at Rockburger. Say hello to Oliver and Samuel. It was a great time. We had a great chat with you folks, man. There was a good vibe. And another one named Rich Logus, the individual who authored the episode article, Parkland, 1 year later, lots of talk, a little action. He has his own talk show as well on Spreaker, and I heard his episode on the same title. He did a real fantastic job. It's like we just have different views, like addressed it differently, but it was, I could say, very effective. So shout out to all those individuals out there. Hopefully things are going well with you. Before I begin, I'd like to talk about some individuals out there that like drain individual folks' energies, succumbs, wants to make them look miserable and believe they are powerful than everybody else, but they're a bunch of unbearable scumbags. They're called psychic vampires. They come all walks of life. And I've been around them. They hate me with a passion, and I could care less. Because I'm not the one that's afraid of them. I have the courage of calling them out. There's a good amount of them in my family got manipulated by them. Try to use their families that they made together to get their way. Go things on a personal level. You're nothing more than filth. Pathetic little creatures. Cockroaches have higher integrity than you. I wouldn't even recommend you individuals to my worst enemies. You know who you are. If you come around me, you'll get a lot more you can chew on. Symbolically speaking, it will blow back in your faces when you least expect it. I had to really speak that right now because I get a little bit infuriated how some of these ingrates, parasites that are around us, claiming there's something and they're not. Individuals like them, even certain communities will vomit on them. They're the people I despise dearly. If you're trying to kind of con man, you're the wrong person to deal with. Guarantee you that. And blowback will be coming soon when you least expect it. And to be very frank, I didn't have to do a damn thing because you're great. I stepped on your own bear traps. Deep down inside, you know I'm right. Speaking of psychic vampires, need a few articles here that they want to jeopardize liberties of others. This came out yesterday from personalliberty.com. Conservative groups in Texas attack gay rights proposals as an effort to ban the Bible. The Tribune News Service here put this out. Has happened. So in Austin, Texas, says that conservative groups are attacking a slate of bills that would expand to LGBTQ Texans, claiming they are anti-Christian and would effectively ban the Bible. Texas Values, a religious advocacy organization, is leading the effort, flooding social media and the conservative press with allegations that passing the bill would force Christians to violate their faith. The groups have launched a website and promoted the hashtag Ban the Bible. Ban the Bible doesn't mean confiscating physical Bibles. LGBT activists aren't that obvious with their intentions yet, but it does mean something even worse. Stripping Texans on their right to practice biblical teachings in their day-to-day lives. Texas Valley's Communications Associate James Weselick recently wrote in the Federalist, just like in Alamo, Texans must once again stand and fight for our freedom. We must dare liberals to come and take it. But lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer Texans and their allies call these claims totally false. Bills do not mention the scriptures and other religious texts, they said, and some bills even exempt religious organizations. It's the bathroom bill fight all over again, said Representative Mary Gonzalez, chairwoman of the new Texas House LGBTQ caucus. When Texas Valley and other groups promoted that effort to legislate which restroom gender people use, their slogan, keep men out of women's restrooms. Now they've rebranded, but Gonzalez complained that they're still selling a false narrative. These policies aren't about banning the Bible. These policies are not supporting discrimination, the El Paso Democrat said. Texas values know that. Texas values have put a dozen bills and resolutions on its ban the Bible hit list. One bill would streamline the process for modifying birth certificates, letting transgender people more easily change their sex and identification documents. Another would repeal the state constitutional amendment banning same-sex marriage. And several others would make it illegal for employers, landlords, or business owners to deny a job, a place to live, or a service to someone based on sexual orientation or gender identity. The bills are similar to laws in at least other 19 states where it's illegal to fire or refuse hire people because they're part of the LGBTQ community. State Representative Eric Johnson, Democrat from Indiana, is the author of one of the employment and discrimination bills. He said it is unacceptable that Texans still have to worry about losing their jobs because they're gay, and he insisted his bill would absolutely not ban the Bible. If you think it should not be okay for your employer to terminate you based on who you date, then you should support my bill, said Johnson, a lawyer who's running for mayor of Dallas. You can try to make it something else, but it's the same kind of protection we provide to people in the workplace based on religion, based on race. It's not about special treatment, he said. House Bill 850 is a civil rights bill. Johnson has tried for years to get something similar passed in 2017. He even got his bill passed out of the committee for the first time. But Texas values and a handful of the state's most conservative advocacy groups are determined to keep that from happening again. The No Bible ban effort has support of empowered Texans, whose political action committee seeks to oust moderate Republicans, and the far-right Texas Pastor Council, which also backed the bathroom bill. Texas Values has also taken the fight to the local level. Nicole Hugdens, the group's policy analyst, appeared at a Carlton City Council meeting last week to oppose a proposal ban discrimination against LGBTQ city employees and contractors. Don't try to ban the Bible, she urged the council. The ordinance passed 5-2. It's unclear why Texas Values has used the argument before now. Conservative groups in California oppose a pro-LGBTQ bill. Later said it would ban the Bible, but the phrase has not been widely used otherwise. Texas Values President Jonathan Sainz said the effort responds to the most aggressive nature of the pro-LGBTQ bills filed this year. He points specifically to House Bill 517, which will penalize licensed counselors who attempt to change a child's sexual orientation or gender identity or reduce a child's same-sex attractions. Good grief. Telling the Christian counselor he cannot use a biblical teaching to address a child's sexual feelings, Sanders said, is a tantamount to remove the scriptures altogether. Several states have banned such counseling, known colloquially as as conversion or ex-gay therapy for minors, but remains legal in Texas. We think it allows someone to use a government law to take a Bible out of someone's hands in that situation, Sanders said. If you're going to be punished for believing what the Bible says, you're banning the Bible. Sanders said saying it said Texas values would oppose the pro-LGBTQ bills even if they exempt religious organizations from enforcement, calling such exemptions either hollow or incomplete. I wonder sometimes if Jesus and the disciples could qualify for some of these exemptions, he said. Texas values instead backing House Bill 1035, dubbed the Free to Believe Act. That bill would protect only clerks and judges who turn away same-sex couples, marriage-related businesses that refuse service to these couples, and more. It sponsored Arlington Republican Representative Bill Zedler. Said the legislation responds to the increased attacks against religious organizations, business owners, and individuals. This bill ensured Texans are free to believe and exercise their belief in their communities without being punished by the government, Zedler said in a prepared statement. Some provisions of the Zedler bills are already guaranteed in the Texas and U.S. Constitution, according to free speech expert Dale Carpenter, as many others are so broad that they may violate civil rights laws. As for banning the Bible, Carpenter said an attempt to do that would be unconstitutional. Nobody has ever pretended to think you could ban Bible verses or the Bible, said Carpenter, chairman of the constitutional law at Southern Methodist University, Dedman School of Law. This is a slogan. It's not a legal principle. It is all sort of poll-tested message rather than a careful legal analyst. He dismissed conservative criticism of the pro-LGBTQ bills, pointing out that several other states have already passed some anti-discrimination laws. Even court challenges have not resulted in the provisions being wiped off the law books. Laws banning discrimination based on sexual orientation and not gender identity cover 20 or 21 states, and we've seen very few conflicts between businesses and gays and transgender people, Carpenter said. There's nothing like banning the Bible or scripture or verse in these bills. It's simply saying you cannot deny someone service if you can't refuse to sell them something simply because they're gay or transgender. It's also acknowledged that it's unlikely any of the pro-LGBTQ bills will become law this year, a task made more difficult by the No Bible Ban effort. But she remains optimistic for the future, chalking the opposition up to fear over the greater acceptance of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people. Texans are growing in this area, she said, smiling. The culture is changing. It is by Lauren Magagi from Dallas Morning News. And you can read the bills right in here as well. Anti-discrimination bills are actually anti-liberty bills. Let's see what they have to say about this. Very interesting indeed. And here too. We'll hit these two. That would be perfect. So this is what they have to say about this. And I know, and even as well, these came out a while back. There's a couple, these actually from Bob Livingston. This one came here on December 13th, discriminating non-discrimination policies. Whenever government establishes a special right or privilege for a perceived aggrieved class, also called minority class, it does so at the expense of the rights of others. It invariably leads to law, logic, and reason being tied into desecrable knots, contributes to the power and collectivism of government, and it is anathema to human liberty. Benjamin Franklin warned about this in his emblematic representations published in 1714. He wrote, "History affords us many instances of the ruins of the state by the prosecution of the measured ills suited to the temper and genius of their people. Ordaining the laws in favor of one part of the nation to prejudice and oppression of another is certainly the most erroneous and mistaken policy. An equal dispensation of protection, rights, privileges, and advantages is what every part is entitled to and ought to enjoy. These measures never fail to create great and violent jealousies and animosities between the people favored and the people oppressed. When a total separation of affections, interests, political obligations, and all manner of connections by which the whole state is weakened. It also leads to absurdities, doublethink, and the death of common sense, and we see this with a growing frequency in any discussion over transgender rights." A Virginia high school teacher, was recently fired for refusing to use male pronouns to refer to a biological girl who decided over the summer that she wanted to be a boy. Teacher Peter Valmy agreed to call the student by her new male name, but said his Christian faith prevented him from using male pronouns for a student he knew was a female. Valmy knew the student from having taught her the previous years. Valmy tried to reach a compromise, saying he wouldn't use pronouns when addressing the girl and would instead just call her by her preferred name. School administrators said that using the student's name singled her out and made her feel uncomfortable. Administrators at West Point High School determined this violated the school's non-discrimination and harassment policies. So after the hearing, they recommended he be fired, even though there was no claim that Valmy deliberately used female pronouns to refer to the student in her presence. Valmy posits that being fired for what he didn't say, i.e. not using certain prescribed words that are the opposite of reality, but school employees claim he did use female pronouns to refer her in the presence of others on occasion. One such mispronouncing offense occurred during a class activity when the student was using virtual reality headset and what was about to run into a wall. Seeing as Valmy told students to stop her. So in essence, Valmy would have been better off if he just let the girl bang into a wall and possibly herself. During the testimony at the hearing, school Principal Jonathan Hoxton said after the mispronouncing incident, he told Valmy, you need to say sorry for that and refer her by her male pronoun, indicating that the principal realizes that the girl is operating in some created non-reality and is needed a female. Emphasis mine. Hochman is also implicating himself in the same offense for which Valmy was fired. So it goes on and on and on here. It's like it's really profoundly disturbing indeed. I'll continue on here. The school's non-discrimination policy was ostensibly designed to ensure that all students are treated equally. But Valmy was fired because he tried to treat the girl as he did all other girls. It's the school's administrators who were treating the girl differently, granting her special privileges with no basis in reality or science. Valmy told local media he loves and respects all his students, but when a solution he tried to reach the base on mutual tolerance was rejected, he was at risk losing the job for having views by most of the world for the most of human history. This is not tolerance, Valmy said. That is coercion. It's also religious discrimination. Valmy is not alone being discriminated against via non-discrimination policies that discriminate in favor of transgenders. A Florida physical education teacher was recently punished when he refused to oversee a biologically female middle schooler who claimed to be a male and wanted to dress in the boys' locker room. When he refused to watch while the girl undressed, he was reprimanded, threatened with being put on administrative leave, and he told he would be transferred to another school. In an email, school administrators told him refusal to watch the girl undress in the locker room will not be tolerated. In other words, the teacher was being ordered by the school to do something that could fire him and charge him as a sexual criminal if the girl was changed in the girls' locker room rather than the boys. Could we say entrapment? The process of moving from a locker room assigned to girls into a locker room assigned to the boys does not make a girl any less physically or biological a girl. Regardless of that, girls, school administrators altered reality. Erasing of traditional sexual norms began in many years ago and has been unofficial public policy in America for a long time. It's been a gradual, most imperceptible process that began when change agents began substituting the word gender, grammatical term, for the word sex, a biological term, as a descriptor for male and female. The effects of this ground to the mind. It removes the biological component that distinguishes it from male to female, inserts an aesthetic component that allows for identity reality creation of an alternative reality. When one suffers from anorexia, eyes are the female, looks in the mirror and sees herself as fat. It doesn't matter what reality it is. Wherever she is normal weight or rail thin, that person creates an alternate reality in her mind. Anorexia is a mental disorder. One seeking to help that person shrug off this false sense of self would not reinforce the unreality by telling her she is fat. Rather, one would help seek treatment for it. She should begin to recognize that she is not fat and is destroying her health. Likewise, who looks in the mirror and sees herself or herself as opposite, his or her biological sex has created an alternative reality. No amount of a chemical or surgical alteration or treatment will change a biological female to a biological male. Vice versa is a mental disorder and should not be coddled or reinforced, nor should anyone be forced into accepting that person's alternate reality as reality. But change agents understand that people will accept almost anything, no matter how immoral or absurd, if it is instituted gradually, first as unofficial public policy, then as official public policy. People accept their conditioning over time, no matter what it is. Even the most absurd notions come to be accepted over a long time frame. Gradualism, the key to define democracy down. And what's disturbing about that, folks, because the truth of the matter is, there's another link on here as well pertaining to this matter. Freedom to discriminate is essential. Freedom to discriminate is essential liberty. So it tells you you have your own free will, freedom of choice, whatever you want to associate with. But definitely, these areas here, you have to really look at. And I'm not going to go around going after the LGBTQ community and so forth, because I always believe in rights of individuals. But when it comes to children, especially trying to be transgender, the other one be a boy and a girl, like, that's totally absurd. Mind control 101. And even too, if you look at the Texas Constitution, they have equal rights and all that in here as well. And when you look at free speech in the press, that's Article 1, Section 8. So it does, freedom of association and so forth, it does, this particular bill can affect that. Is considered to be unconstitutional, because you cannot really force others by law to do these things. The best thing to do, I would say, supply and demand. If they don't want to hire these people, don't even show up at these shops. Because the truth of the matter is, they need us more, we need them. Or even organizing a union. I have people in the stagehand union. A lot of them are, gay and lesbian, but you know what? We always work as a team, and as long as they do their job, that's fine. That's what I don't mind. But based on this area here, it does affect Article 1, Article 1 of the Texas Constitution, and you can look at this too. It could be considered a ex post facto law, or impairing obligation to contract. So that could be considered that particular bill, the bill that they're trying to propose, can be unconstitutional. And even if it violates Section 19, no citizen of the state shall be deprived of life, liberty, property, privileges, or immunities, or any manner disenfranchised except by due course of the law of the land. So, due course. So these particular bills that they want to protect the LGBT community on a governmental level can deprive people's life, liberty, etc., property. And we can just go on down here as well. I'm just looking right now. Suspension of law. And even 29. 29? Yeah, let's look at 29 here. Provisions of Bill of Rights, except that for the powers of government to forever remain inviolated. To guard against transgressions of the high powers here and delegated, we declare that everything in this Bill of Rights is accepted out of general powers of government and shall forever remain inviolated, and all laws contrary thereto or to the following provisions shall be void. So this particular bill, which they want to shove down our throats, they want to shove down their throats, House Bill 517, and of course, I'm just going to look at this one more time. 517. There's another one down here as well, if I recall. Let me just go right here. I'm just winging it right now, folks. Yeah. So 517 is considered null and void. Period. So I'm going to add that through the memo as well. And if you want to see those other links too about discrimination is essential liberty and so forth, there's a links right below, and definitely check it out. It's very good stuff. So, but like I said, I'm not homophobic or anything like that. That's pretty absurd. Always talk to people as individuals, and everyone has the right to do this on adult levels, as long as you don't violate others. Sorry about that. So, next one here is interesting. Came out from American Thinker. Came out yesterday. The Homosexual Mafia Strikes Again by Arvin Garmer. Not exactly, he said the following, which is in a sense being treated worse and above the crime. City Council is controlled by the homosexual community. Diaz also stated that openly gay council speaker Corey Johnson is married to a man. In response, Johnson demanded that Diaz apologizes for his homophobic remarks, which have no place in New York City. Even Diaz's own son, Bronx Borough President Ruben Diaz Jr., reprimanded his father to his grave sin, tweeting, "New York City is a place where we celebrate our diversity and inclusivity. The LGBT community is unclearly an essential voice in our city, and at Reverend Brad's sentiments are antagonistic, quarrelsome, and wholly unnecessary. He should apologize." Thankfully, Diaz Sr. is sticking to his guns. Although he is otherwise a liberal Democrat, he is anti-abortion and anti-gay marriage. Well, funny about that, like I said before, you have your different views on it, and I know that the late-term abortion does not coincide with Roe v. Wade, and marriage licensing is considered a privilege according to Black Law's Dictionary. About, hey, it has to be approved by competent authority. All right, something incredibly rare these days in the Democratic Party. Diaz Sr., unlike other most Democrats, has not drunk the Kool-Aid. New York Times reported further, the City Council is already exploring disciplinary action against him. Committee of Standards and Ethics, at the behest of several council members who have complained, will open an investigation if Mr. Diaz is found guilty of disorderly conduct, which could also include violating policies against discrimination and harassment. Mr. Diaz could be reprimanded, censured, fined, or expelled from the City Council by 2/3 of the votes of his members. The Council Speaker, Corey Johnson, who is gay and HIV positive, used his personal Twitter account to note that he shared the anger and pain of Mr. Diaz's colleagues about deeply offensive comments about the gay community. "We are currently reviewing all potential disciplinary scenarios," Mr. Johnson said in a statement, and nothing is off the table. "My personal viewpoint that he should resign is unacceptable, is Trumpian." Another Trump hater. Who the hell cares, right? Speaker Johnson's hysteria is misplaced. Rather than be upset at Diaz for a comment, maybe he should look at himself and the truth of Diaz's word, to be precise. New York City Council said gay and lesbian transgender caucus, in which Mr. Johnson's name prominently appears. At least two of the last 3 New York City Council were openly homosexual. The council, through its powerful LGBT caucus, and thus far passed almost 20 pro-homosexual measures. Did Johnson ever consider that Diaz's point might be correct, rather than mindlessly attacking it? The scenario is symptomatic of something far deeper that is happening in America, in which the homosexual community attempts to muzzle and bully its opponents into submission. Or else, the sad truth of this is that Diaz Sr. and other Americans who told the notion of biblical values are basically not permitting by the pro-gay lobby to express their opinion on the issues. In case point, Democratic Senator Cory Booker recently questioned judicial nominee Naomi Rio, essentially pushing her to disclose whether she felt that homosexual relationships are sinful. Booker was obviously trying to interject the homosexual agenda into the judiciary selection process, maintaining that it was not acceptable to harbor unfavorable beliefs about gay relationships. "I'm proud that the Jewish for Coalition for Jewish Values condemned Booker. For this, CJV President Rabbi Pesh Lerner remarked, "It was outrageous that Senator Booker would use a religion as a weapon with which to exclude an eminently well-qualified candidate from public service, and not only because factoring in the candidate's personal religious views violates Article 60 of the Constitution. The Bible expressly declares homosexual activity to be sinful. So a senator would apparently disqualify Moses himself, the original judge holding from that office, much less anyone in our day who adheres to the same biblical values that our nation's founding fathers held dear. In contemporary, politically correct society, when no one is not embracing something in the liberal agenda, he is audaciously assigned and contrived a mental disorder in order to deflect and stifle his opinion. One who opposes the gay agenda is homophobic. One who perceives as being against Islam suffers from malady of Islamophobia. It is time for the homosexual lobby to stop the intimidation and bully tactics and take a good look in the mirror. It might be the same. It might just be that homophobia could then become a legitimate term, reflective of decent people who have been a menace and victimized by the homosexual community solely on the basis of the former principal beliefs and occasional expressions. So, exactly. So, there's it's more like Orwellian-style tactics, regardless. This is just another example of what you're looking at. The Nazis did that to intimidate people. The communist secret police is the same thing. And this particular group of mobsters, you want to call it, or conscriptors, all right, the tyrants, are doing the same thing across the board. So you got to look at folks, and even people in that community. There's a lot of awesome, beautiful people in those areas, which I have a great time chatting with. I had great neighbors, okay, and I still, if I see them, we still talk today. But when you try to shove down people's throats and do something stupid to get that particular attention, I think the reason why Cory Booker threw it in there because he has money coming from those particular lobbyist groups. Yeah, never to worry about the National Rifle Association. We all know that same old song and dance, my friends. And you know what? They have the right to, Mr. Diaz, and he has a right to speak his mind. He has an opinion. Who the hell cares? That's what freedom of speech is about. Plain and simple. You uphold your oath of office. Period. No exceptions. And speaking of here, another another interesting thing here that came by J.D. Pendry, came out I guess yesterday. Yeah, I think possibly yesterday. News Reviews, Modern Liberalism, Pushing the Boundaries of Personal Liberty. It says here, classic liberalism is a political ideology that advocates limited government, constitutionalism, rule of law, due process, individual liberal rights, including freedom of religion, press, assembly, and free markets. Well, Thomas Jefferson was considered a classic liberal. The people who wrote the Declaration of Independence, who was involved in the Declaration of Independence and signing it, were considered liberals for the time. But I'll continue on here. Classic liberalism is today's radical right wing. In his book, Slouching Towards Gomorrah, Modern Liberalism, American Decline, Dr. Robert H. Bork explains that modern liberalism, not to be confused with classical liberalism, has constantly moved away from the constraints of personal liberty imposed by religion, morality, law, family, and community. These concepts comprise in the heart of American middle-class values built on the foundation of Judeo-Christian values. Modern liberalism discards them. They see themselves as more enlightened than those who adhere. For them, they believe a moral code, especially concerning personal liberty, is unnecessary. They know what's best. They push more accurately and eradicate boundaries, placing constraints on their concept of personal liberty. Too many Americans have fallen prey of this immoral ideology. It is a philosophy that casts off morals and natural law. The morals we have discarded are the basis for the principles by which we live. They also abandon principles. This forces anyone holding the Christian values to choose a path. It's a choice that can only be made by looking inward. It comes down to an assessment of what is good and what is evil. For each of us, good and evil is determined by the morals and principles we abide. From the beginning of time, the battles have always been between good and evil. In America, we reached a potential tipping point where evil believes it's good. Evil does not get decide what's good unless we let go of our morality. That's from there's a thing on here about Isaiah chapter 5, verses 19 to 21. You can listen to yourselves, folks. What happened when people, a nation of people, abandoned the constraints of personal liberty imposed by religion, morality, law, family, and community? Evil creeps in. Little by little, it saturates society before kicking the door wide open. It is simple as language. People feel no compunction about the walking around with profanity presented in its most vulgar form on t-shirts or protest signs animated from their mouths, filling their text messages and social media posts. In tirades toward the nation's president, celebrities feel free to blast out on national television, especially when it's so thunderous applause of their peers. Adolescents routinely use the same language. When I was young, sneaking a smoke was pushing the boundaries. Now it's who has the boldest, most foul mouth. Don't get me wrong, I'm not angelic in the language department, but I spent most of my life in the army where cussing can be an art form. Even hardcore soldiers understood and followed the code of civility. They knew when to dial it back. There is no restraint these days. Just language, right? No, it's evil sneaking in and tainting souls. I have that problem too as well. I can boldly admit that. Language kinds of cuts us loose. We're free to talk as we please, anywhere we please. We decide if it's bad. When we start throwing F-bombs around like it's just shucks, and that becomes accepted. We've not only changed the face of our society, but we challenged the fiber of it. So where do we go? We legalize marijuana. There's no harm. No worse than having a drink of alcohol or two, is it? A mushy-headed teenager of the 1960s. I will tell you something with complete certainty. Marijuana gives teenagers the bravado, the edge, or the hey man, far out attitude to try something a little more potent. The craving to get a little higher, go tripping in those days. Psychedelics like LSD produced dead kids who thought they could fly. Today it's cocaine, meth, heroin, fentanyl, and death. I was a fortunate young man when my aim for the military pulled me out of that environment. The looser we get, the more we delve into the hidden. We normalize homosexuality and transgenderism. It is not enough that people may live as they choose in America. They must demean and slander as bigoted anyone who chooses they follow a different moral code. Someone who does not follow along with tossing away those self-imposed moral constraints on personal liberty. And not only do they demean, they try to outright destroy. We loosen our language, we embrace our drug culture, we normalize the abnormal. Does it stop there? Not a chance. Evil passes laws these days declaring the standing ovation that evil is good. A woman that chooses to kill her unborn child up to and up according to date of birth are actually raising discussion about whether ones that born alive can be killed or allowed to die. Evil wants us to accept that's good. It's not murder. It's a woman's health choice. Meanwhile, in Congress, there's pending legislation introduced make animal cruelty a felony. Now, I believe it's the lowest of the low that mistreats or intentionally harms animals, especially those we've domesticated and made dependent on us. But will you think it will come up with a bipartisan law? It could figure out how to protect the defenseless in our society. Good versus evil. Evil wins when good does not confront it. And so I give you a little audio here too about Romans chapter 1 verses 18 to 32. And I could say it's understandable what he's coming from. And I'm a person too that supports decriminalizing drugs, but doesn't mean I need it. I don't. And all you gotta do is, folks, give people the truth. Start thinking for yourselves. Who cares about this herd conformity? Who cares about fitting in? Be an own individual. Look at things in a bigger picture. Articulate ourselves. Strengthen our thought processes and our spirits. Got too many folks out there wants us to become government dependents, wants a bunch of damn handouts, wants given respect, never earned. A lot of people stood for what was right and died for what they believed in. But now you see a bunch of people want to cry in the wind because someone farted, and you know what? They want to take our personal liberties away, so we can't handle it. Something to look at, right? Absolutely. But I gotta give J.D. Pendry a thumbs up on this, and all in good faith. All right, do one more here. I am done. Oh yeah. This one here came from the 10th Amendment Center. It came out a while back, and we'll talk about the whole state of emergency. This is what Chris Ann Hall has to say. This here, is presidential state of emergency constitutional? My inbox is being inundated with the question du jour. If President Trump declared a state of emergency to build a wall on the border of Mexico, is that constitutional? I'm certain that is not the right question, or perhaps not the right way to ask it. But to ask it and answer it correctly, let's briefly remind ourselves of America's constitutional structure and function. A reminder. The Constitution of the United States defines the powers for the three branches of the federal government. Each of these branches is delegated specific, enumerated powers that are not only limited and defined by the Constitution, but also separated and distinct in their delegations. The branch of government do not share powers unless the specific cooperation as described by the Constitution. For example, the power to create treaties, today referred to the obfuscatory labels, deals, is not an autonomous power belongs to the President, but one that requires specific concurrence by the Senate, a la the Iran nuclear deal. May be great, but will never be approved by the Senate. Recall that the 10th Amendment declares that any powers are not delegated to the Constitution remains in the hands of the states. This is the opposite of Teddy Roosevelt's stewardship doctrine, said that the feds can do whatever they want as long as the Constitution doesn't say they can't. Federal supremacy loves this perspective. This was not discussion or conclusion of the ratification debate. There are also unnamed powers floating and either waiting to be snatched by the central government. Roosevelt Secretary of War William Taft conveyed the framers' position. A specific grant must be either in the federal Constitution or in an act of the Congress passed in pursuance thereof. There are no undefined residuum of power in which the federal government can exercise because it seemed to be in public interest. The specific delegations of power, as well as non-delegations, were created thoughtfully, deliberately, with knowledge of history and human nature. The limitation of those powers involved considerable debate and past study into past history and ancient governments. Patrick Henry said in his famous "Give me liberty, give me death" speech, "I have but one lamp which my feet are guided, and that is the lamp of experience. I have no way of judging the future but by the past." Alexander Hamilton wrote in Federalist 20, "Experience is the oracle of truth." However, it is uncommon in the evolution of the American public to see the government and the citizen cast off the wisdom and experience enshrined in the founding documents to address some urgent necessity. Instead of taking the intentionally cumbersome path and do it right, Americans are willing to run roughshod over the constitutional barriers because we have to get this done, or there is no way to do it. These instances have slowly transmuted the republic into a nearly limitless federal behemoth we know today. We would be well served to paste a banner over our televisions, and computer reminds us of what William Pitt said in 1783. Necessity is a plea for every infringement of human freedom. It is an argument of tyrants. It is the creed of slaves. The question. So when people ask, like the president, can the president do, can the House do, can the Senate do, or can the Supreme Court do? The first sources must be consulted are the Constitution and the people who drafted it. If the Constitution provides no authority for the activity, then the power does not constitutionally reside in the hands of the federal government. So more to the root of the question being asked. Does the Constitution enumerate power to the President to declare a state of emergency? The short answer, no. Every state of emergency refers to the National Emergency Act as a source of its authority. So the question is, does the Constitution authorize Congress to alter, expand, or contract executive power by legislative act? The Constitution answer to this question is obviously no. Congress cannot add powers that the Constitution has not delegated for the President, nor they take away powers that have been delegated. For Congress to have authority to add the power to the executive branch, they would have to possess the authority to actually amend the Constitution by congressional act, and they do not. Additionally, for Congress to delegate a power to the executive branch that has been constitutionally delegated to Congress, it is a per se violation of the Constitution by crushing the principle of separation of powers. James Madison, quoting political philosopher Montesquieu, was very direct with his words regarding separation of powers. There can be no liberty where the legislative and executive powers are united in the same person or the body of magistrates. Federalist Papers 47. Spending, war, appropriations, national defense, naturalization are all powers specifically delegated to Congress. For Congress to abdicate its powers to the executive branch is not only not authorized by the Constitution, it is necessarily forbidden by the principle of separation of powers to assure the security of the liberty of the people. Shockingly, this debate over states of emergency has raged for decades, and nobody seems to offer the obvious correct answer. If we want the President to have such powers, we must amend the Constitution. Yet, if you consider how far we have strayed and how long we have been off the path, President Trump is doing nothing out of the ordinary. He's following a long history of extra-constitutional, aka unconstitutional action. We have just accepted a broken government as the norm since at least 1861 when it comes to national emergencies. Abraham Lincoln. How did we get here? If you tell a lie long enough, people believe it to be truth, and the lie of expanded executive power had a long history. I think this principle is even more powerful when that lie comes from someone you like or applies to a situation you happen to agree with. But that lie can only operate as truth and with very dire consequences. The most obvious consequence would be that the lie operates as truth not for only for people you like, but also people you don't like. Some claim expansion of executive power began with George Washington's administration response to the risky rebellion. Yet, in this instance, Congress authorized Washington to quell an insurrection which falls within the constitutional authority of both Congress and President. It was Congress that began creating standby laws to give President powers beyond the granted Constitution in time of national emergency. They should have proposed a constitutional amendment, not pass a law. Interestingly, Washington later pardoned everyone who was arrested during the rebellion, if they were not already acquitted. The first unilateral act of a president arose when Lincoln blockaded American ports and expanded military forces while Congress and the courts eventually went along, and this became the confirmation and justification of the president's emergency power. Woodrow Wilson and FDR faced similar emergency power controversies, and they were all thought of by Congress. In 1917, President Woodrow Wilson started the presidential proclamation that triggered the availability of so-called standby laws for these national declarations. The process came into head written after Truman proclaimed emergency in response to Korean hostilities. The same order was used to wage war in Vietnam 22 years later. Congress, led by Senator Church, launched an investigation. One of the numerous congressional studies in 1973 showed that Congress had already passed 470 statutes granting the president extraordinary powers during a time of emergency. In an attempt to restrain and proceduralize the use of emergency powers, perhaps restrain the monster they allowed to grow. Congress passed the National Emergency Act in September of 1976. In fact, in the light of the fact that Congress is not authorized with congressional act to expand delegate authority, consider these 2 points. from 2 constitutional delegates. There is no position which depends on clear principles that every act of a delegated authority contrary to the tenure of the commission under which is excised and void. No legislative act, therefore, contrary to the Constitution can be valid. Thus, paper 78 by Alexander Hamilton. In the power of the Constitution predominates anything, cite, therefore, shall be enacted by Congress contrary thereto, will not have the force of law. James Wilson, Pennsylvania Ratified Convention, 1787. The Constitution as well is not silent on the issue. Article 6, Clause 2 codifies the principles laid down by the above drafters of the Constitution when it says, the Constitution and the law of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, shall be the supreme law of the land, and the judges in every state shall be bound thereby. Anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. And it says here, every law must be made, every federal action must be taken, and pursuant to the Constitution, this is not specifically authorized by the Constitution, and the judges in every state are not bound thereby. What that means is the National Emergencies Act, War Powers Act, which is Title 8 U.S. Code 1182, empowering the President to determine the admissibility of aliens and many others are all unconstitutional delegates of Congress, powered by Congress to the President, which makes them by the terms of the Constitution and the drafters of that document null and void. Where do you go from here? So the question is not if the President declared a national national emergency and builds a wall, is that unconstitutional? That's an easy question to answer. No. The question is, will we keep pretending to live in a constitutional republic by making it up as we go along? Other than electing the Congress that actually cares for the security and safety of integrity of the nation, there are 2 simple options. Amend the Constitution, have the states give the President this authority, or stop pretending, get rid of the Constitution, go back to monarchy. Oh, Chrisanne Hall. She is something else. Always gotta check out her shows, man. It's very good. And always enjoy reading her work. She's always spot on. I get all these people that are climaxing on the National Emergencies Act. I gotta send this to them as well. Actually, some of them are learning about Chrisanne Hall, and they're actually taking the time to watch her videos and listening to her show, which is fantastic. I can thank those folks and sharing it too. I thank them for that as well. So that's what I gotta say, man, my friends. The wall, National Emergency Act, is null and void under our U.S. Constitution. To all you Trump lovers out there, deal with it too. That includes their successors and predecessors that worship their presidents too. All right, my friends, that's it. I thank everyone for listening. Plus, feel free to download and share throughout your social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, or you said something that's interesting you want to check out, whatever you do, please send your correspondence to Decorum. Plus, I'll leave on my footnotes within my Spreaker page. All right. Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that the demoniac resistance helps you for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading the love, and may your guardian spirits be with you.